Hi, Alex Polyak here. The lore of Grand Theft Auto encompasses a vast array of stories, facts, and details. However, within this wealth of information, inconsistencies exist that make the game world feel less cohesive. In this video, we'll discuss some of these instances, including both significant lore differences and minor, subtle ones. Let's get started. Let's start with Catalina, an important and charismatic character in GTA. When GTA 3 was released in 2001, one of the game's promotional websites stated that Catalina was of mixed Colombian and Dominican descent. This, incidentally, may be one of the reasons why she was influential within the Colombian cartel. In 2004, GTA San Andreas was released, and Catalina was revealed to be the cousin of Caesar, who is Mexican. When CJ tries to find her, he refers to her as a Mexican.
What the fuck did you want?
Nothing. I'm looking for a friend of mine's cousin, Mexican guy. He ain't here.
It's certainly possible that her mixed Colombian-Dominican heritage doesn't prevent her from being Caesar's cousin. Carl may have simply been guided by Cesar Villalpando's heritage and therefore expected her to be Mexican. But let's also look at a few details. If we look at Catalina's appearance, we'll see a significant difference. In GTA 3, she has fair skin and green eyes, while in San Andreas, her skin is dark and her eyes are brown. This doesn't prove a change in her ethnicity, but it clearly shows that the character was visually redesigned. The second detail, when CJ says he's looking for a Mexican, Catalina doesn't question it at all and immediately understands that he's talking about her.
Mexican guy. He ain't here.
You? But Cesar said you was a real man.
Of course, Catalina was expecting to meet Carl anyway, and therefore understood everything immediately. But it's still a noteworthy moment. The next detail is the set of Spanish words she uses in GTA San Andreas. While common to almost every Spanish-speaking country, taken together they are more characteristic of Mexico than Colombia or the Dominican Republic. The entire context described above seems to point to the girl's updated origins, which are now Mexican. Most likely, the character's image was adjusted to better fit the setting and theme of San Andreas, but this created a difference in appearance and nationality from Catalina's original image. Although I admit that the question of nationality is still not 100% settled. By the way, here's another interesting fact. The actress who voiced Catalina in both games is Mexican. The next lore discrepancy is quite minor, but interesting in its own way. Initially, GTA directly referenced Elvis Presley by name, and even if the newspapers in GTA 3 and Vice City could be considered simply an Easter egg, a quote from one of the tourists in Vice City seems more like part of the game's lore.
Elvis Presley is greatest rock and roll!
A little later, GTA San Andreas was released, featuring costumed NPCs in the city of Las Venturas who parody Elvis. If we open the city guides included with some physical editions of the game on PC, we can read that all these costumed men are parodies of Belvis. Thus, the artist's name in the GTA world was slightly changed, and it's likely that Rockstar Games did this to avoid infringing on the rights to the King of Rock and Roll's image. Incidentally, when GTA The Trilogy, the definitive edition, was later released, Elvis's name was also removed, leaving the newspapers referencing a certain unnamed rocker. At the very beginning of GTA 4, when Nico meets his beloved cousin, we learn that all the bridges in Liberty City are temporarily closed due to a terrorist threat.
Why don't you show me around the city?
Fucking terrorists!
What?
Terrorists! There's been a big scare and you can't go across the bridges so good.
These bridges then open as missions progress, and this is simultaneously commented on in the in-game media, lending a logical justification to everything that's happening. However, if you play The Lost and Damned, all bridges will be open by default, even though the beginning of this DLC's events coincides chronologically with the opening of GTA 4 when the bridges were still closed. It's not hard to guess that for the developers, this was merely a convention, as one game needed to temporarily restrict the player's movement around the area, while the other didn't. The problem arises specifically from a lore standpoint, as in GTA 4, we were clearly told that the bridges were closed for a reason that made sense in the game's world. But unfortunately, all these lore details simply became meaningless with the release of The Lost and Damned. The following example isn't particularly significant, but it's still another error in the GTA universe. Old official websites for GTA 3 and Vice City mentioned that the Ammu-Nation gun store chain opened in 1978, as indicated by the phrase, "whooping liberal pinkos since 1978. However, when a similar website for San Andreas later appeared, the Ammu-Nation entry listed 1962. That's a 16-year difference, which is quite a bit. It's hard to say which year is correct, but I'd still favor the San Andreas version. Firstly, it expands the timeline of Ammu-Nation's existence in the GTA universe. Secondly, 1962 coincides with the birth of many U.S. gun retail chains that later became popular, while the late 1970s was more of a period of further development in this industry. Third, the wording on the San Andreas website, in my opinion, is more convincing than the slogan on posters from previous games. And fourth, the principle of later information is canon applies here. This may not always be correct, but Rockstar often employs this principle. Interestingly, the GTA Wiki ignores information from the official San Andreas website, but perhaps some players will now expand on that page. However, it does mention that the radio in GTA talks about Ammu-Nation's origins in the 1950s. This makes the origin story of this gun shop even more convoluted. Let's talk about Victor Vance, the protagonist of Vice City Stories, who died tragically at the very beginning of GTA Vice City. This character is full of contradictions. First, in both games, Victor has a different head shape, different eyebrows, eye color, and other details. Furthermore, during that deal, he's more lethargic, a little hunched over, and slouched, even though just 2 years earlier he was physically fit and active. Yes, he's no longer a soldier, and it's also worth noting that anything could have happened to him in the intervening 2 years, but I still think the transformation in this case was too unrealistic. Second, in Vice City, he speaks with a strong accent, whereas 2 years earlier, his English sounded much more natural.
100% pure grade A Colombian, my friend.
Not exactly, but, my dad, he came here from DR. We didn't have a lot of opportunities. What else was I supposed to do?
Third, the official GTA Vice City strategy guide states that Lance Vance's age in 1986 is 32, while the Vice City Stories guide states that Victor is 28 in 1984. This makes Lance 2 years older. The problem is that the entire context of these brothers' stories, their relationship, and even their appearance suggests that Victor should likely be the older brother. This is most clearly evident in Vice City, especially when comparing the two brothers' appearances. In Vice City Stories, it's less obvious, but the entire story of their relationship is that Lance is the immature brother who constantly gets into trouble, behaves childishly and awkwardly, while Vic is the real head of the family, both within the family and in the criminal underworld. He is responsible for everything, looks after the brothers, and makes all the decisions. He also clashes with Lance over his silly antics, and Lance complains that Victor never took him seriously. I didn't see any direct mention of which brother is older or younger, but their appearances in Vice City and their relationship in Stories provide an obvious answer, making it very odd that Victor is technically 2 years younger than Lance. While this reasoning can be questioned, as a person's appearance and behavior don't always reflect their age, I personally think the whole situation unfolded something like this. Initially, when Lance was stated to be 32, the same clarification regarding Victor wasn't necessary because he was an insignificant character who, on top of everything else, was already portrayed as older. But when Rockstar began thinking about Vice City Stories, and Vic was chosen as the protagonist, he had to be made younger, even by more than 2 years, and his official age was recorded as 28. Lance also became younger and still retained his younger brother status. On top of all this, Vic was given a different voice with a less pronounced accent, and his facial features were altered, though I'm not sure this was entirely necessary. Interestingly, the protagonist's appearance was originally intended to be more in line with Vic from Vice City in the beta, but it seems Rockstar decided to sacrifice the integrity of the overall GTA lore for a protagonist they felt was more suitable for Vice City Stories. In GTA 4 and episodes from Liberty City, you can find a police database with information on many characters. Visiting the page of Ashley Butler, the ex-girlfriend of Johnny Klebitz, the protagonist of The Lost and Damned, we learn that she was 27 years old in 2008. This means that 5 years later, during the events of GTA 5, she should be 32. However, after the famous scene with Trevor, Ashley, and Johnny, news eventually appears in gaming media stating that Butler died at the age of 37. Therefore, according to information from GTA 4, she was born in 1981, while in GTA 5, she was born in 1976. Most likely, the author of that news article simply made a mistake and did not take into account earlier information about Ashley. Now it is difficult to say what age should be considered canonical. On the one hand, the Liberty City Police Department seems like a more reliable source than the newspaper, but on the other hand, the principle of later is canon may be at work here. Tell me in the comments which of these options you trust more. One of the most interesting cases, in my opinion, of Rockstar altering Grand Theft Auto lore is the story of Phil Cassidy. This character originally appeared in GTA 3 in 2001, and at that time, he was presented as a true soldier, an American patriot who lost his arm for his country's interests during the war in Nicaragua. The game's promotional website explains this, and even in GTA 3 itself, Ray Machowski mentions serving alongside Phil.
An old army buddy of mine runs a business in Rockford. We saw action in Nicaragua back when the country knew what it was doing.
Cassidy himself then speaks of the war in Nicaragua and the arm he lost in battle.
Hey, if I teamed up with you in Nicaragua, maybe I'd still have my arm.
All this leaves no doubt that the writers created a coherent and unambiguous portrayal of a valiant and courageous American soldier. But a year later, GTA Vice City comes out, and the character's image changes dramatically. It turns out that Cassidy isn't a valiant soldier at all, but simply a patriotic drunkard with a penchant for guns. All the stories about his participation in the war were just a legend, and Phil lost his arm out of stupidity. He wants to appear to be a war veteran, but in reality, he only shoots at the shooting range and drinks hard liquor. This is shown not only in missions, but also confirmed on the game's website, where it is stated that Cassidy was constantly rejected for military service due to his unsuitable temperament and addiction to alcohol. This decision by the writers seems funny and original, but it still feels more like poorly written lore than a good plot twist. If only Phil himself was misleading us with his cover story in GTA 3, the subsequent changes to this character's image would not have raised any questions. But his words were confirmed by the game's official website, as well as by Ray Machowski, who personally fought in the war alongside Phil. So while Rockstar tried to rewrite the lore and give Phil a different story, it didn't quite make it feel coherent. These are the kinds of inconsistencies that occur in the GTA universe, and the reasons for them can range from carelessness on the part of the writers to the desire to create a more appropriate character for the game's context. The examples I highlighted in this video aren't the only inconsistencies in Grand Theft Auto lore, and we may return to this topic in other videos. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave me a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more GTA content. See you soon.